Not yet, not yet. Okay, you're on. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Part of the thrust of the Torah regarding Shemitah and other halachas which appear in this week's parsha is the concern for the poor, for people who don't have. And the Torah promised us that there would never be a shortage of such people. There always will be people who are needy. Now, we can look at it in a number of different ways. Chazal, when they looked at it in their time, set a poverty line, so to speak. And if the person possessed 200 zuzim at the time of the Gemara, so we don't know what that is in our terms. But if he possessed that amount and more than that, he was not considered an oni, and therefore was not entitled to these benefits to go on the field and collect. They not in Shemitah, it was above the poverty line. If it was below the poverty line, so then he was entitled. So the Gemara itself deals with the fact that this is an imperfect system, because the Gemara says, let's say a person, he's got 195 zuzim, so he's poor, he can go collect. And he finds 10 zuzim on the street. So is that good for him or bad for him? On one hand, it's good for him because that's 10 zuzim more than he had in the morning. On the other hand, it now pushes him above the poverty line, and therefore limits the amount of aid that he can get from others. So the Gemara wants to discuss, because we have halacha of zochid la'adam shelo b'fono, you can do a good thing for someone even if the other person is unaware of it. So let's say I'm walking down the street and I see this 10 zuzim, and I pick it up and I say, I'm picking it up on behalf of Yankel. So Yankel is kohen because zochid la'adam shelo b'fono. You can do a good thing for someone even if that person is unaware, he doesn't know. What if Yankel had 195 and I did this? Am I doing him a schus or not? Am I benefiting him at all? And therefore, the rule of Zachin Lodem Shalom B'Fano would not apply, because it's not a schus, it's a chova. The negative thing that you're doing for him. So this is a sliding scale, and there's no perfect way to measure it. You don't know how to measure it. And if we measure it purely by human emotions, everybody wants more than what they have. That's true of 100 million as well. So because of that, therefore, is everybody an oni? Well, in certain respects, we would say yes, because everyone feels that they're lacking something, no matter what, whether it be financial, social question of honor, whatever. No one's cup is overflowing. The nature of people is that they don't see it that way. That's why Chazal said the famous idea that their definition of an oni and an oshir, Ezeru oshir, who is a wealthy man, someone that feels satisfied, not missing anything. So then he's not poor. But someone that feels that he is missing something, that it could be better, could have more, so then that person is always considered an oni. And therefore Chazal came up with the great statement, Ein aniyus ela b'das. Poverty is a mental condition. Now, there's no question that poverty is an economic condition. There are people that, God forbid, simply don't have money for the next meal. But the concept of poverty is not dependent upon that. The concept of poverty is b'das, how a person thinks of himself, how he views himself. And that's what David HaMelech said, Kosi Regoya, my cup overflows. David HaMelech said he has everything. The person that feels that way, so then that's a different type of wealth. So when the Torah talks about Oni and Evion, it's talking psychologically, not only in terms of economic welfare. So we have many shilas in halacha. We have a rule that the Mosakir ponim b'mishpat. When it comes to judgment, you're not supposed to recognize who is wealthy, who is poor, who's influential, and who isn't. The task of the judge is to be blind to these things. But that's, again, a very difficult level to achieve. So the Gemara says it works both ways. If the man is wealthy, so that the judge is inclined to find in his favor, simply because of the fact that he thinks that somehow down the line in life, he also may need a favor from this person. And because the person has wealth and influence, I will decide the case on his behalf. So to speak, he will owe me the favor. Then I'll be able to cash in that ticket when I need to do so. But there's an opposite idea. And that is, this guy's a rich man. The other, the plaintiff is a poor man. The rich man, if I decide against him, he's got plenty of money to pay it. Will not really impair him in any way. The poor man needs the money. So I will decide on behalf of the poor man, because the wealthy man can afford it. But not only that, I'll feel good about it, because I've saved the poor man. But the halacha is not like that. You have no right to do so. So therefore, all of this always is a question of judgment. How do we look at things? And it's a difficult question because every case is different and every person is different. There's a famous story about the Dayan Brisk, Simcha Zelig Rieger. He was the Dayan when Reb Chaim was the Rav in Brisk. Reb Chaim didn't pass in the Shilas, the Dayan passed. So there once was a case, now Shavuos time, when the sheikh slaughtered a steer or a bull, and then they did the autopsy, and there was a big shaila, and the Chaim and the Simcha Zelig were up all night trying to see if they could salvage the bull as being kosher. At the end, they told the sheikh that it was not kosher and that they could not certify it as being kosher, and that he would take the loss, which was a considerable loss, big animal. Okay, so the sheikh had heard what they said, and he accepted it. He said, Rebbe, that's the way it is, that's the way it is. A few months later, the sheikh had had a din Torah with another person in town. And Reb Simcha Zelig was the diet. And at the end of the din Torah, Reb Simcha Zelig found against the shofar that he would be paying, would have to pay the other person the amount of money that was involved. The amount of money that was involved was much less than the value of the animal in the first instance. Nevertheless, the shochet got up on his feet and he cursed the Dayan, and he just went wild. So a day later, Simcha Zelig said to Reb Chaim, he said, I don't understand. When we said that the behemoth was not kosher, so he incurred a substantial financial loss, and he didn't make an issue of it. He accepted it. And here, where the loss is much less, you see that he went completely out of control. Cursed the judge, everything. How could that be? Chaim said that it's human psychology. The behemoth, the animal being treif, does not in any way impinge on his honor. The animal's treif, so he can't do anything about it. That doesn't say anything about him. Here, you decided against him for someone else, on behalf of someone else. That impinges on his honor. That lowers in his mind his status. What do you mean I was wrong? That he can't abide. So that's part of the idea that Chazal said that you think you're poor and unfortunate, that's a mental condition, not necessarily what it took out of your pocket. It's how you see yourself. And therefore, this always is a difficult thing to measure. You always read about a case that a person passes away and they find $500,000 in cash under his mattress. And all of his life he was a schnorrer. That's a mental condition. It's not a financial condition. So the halacha, the tshuvas tried to deal with the fact, how do we deal with something that is really a mental condition and try to translate it into, so to speak, dollars and cents into shkolim. That's a very difficult idiom. And because of that, therefore, all of this discussion about Oni and Evion is always a sliding scale, depending upon the psychology and the society and the people who are involved. אבל חנני בן עקאי שאומר רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכר של ישראל ופיך חירבו להם תורה ומצוות שנאמר אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יביאו תורה ויעבדו.
Hey,